1. The year was 1995. My grandpa was always one of those coy men that knew how to make his way to the top of any situation, sometimes regardless to the cost of others. But while shady, he was for the most part a decent human. This story isn't about his shady side, though. It's about how he was able to build the tallest house in town, even though it was against building code for the county. A general contractor bought a property in this small town and just started building, without getting the proper permits for the house. The house was already framed and started getting sheeted and had the roof built, but when the building inspector was called to the property, of course, he shut the construction down. The contractor was missing permits and the house was too tall for what code allowed, so the job was red-tagged and shut down. The general contractor couldn't afford to tear down the house and rebuild, so he just walked away. My grandpa heard about this and went to talk to the bank to see if he could buy the property. He offered them $250,000 for it, but the bank denied his offer and said it was going to be auctioned off. He decided he was going to show up for the auction. Day of the auction, the only other person who showed up is another contractor from town who my grandpa knew. He talks to him and basically lays it out like, "I really want this property, and if you'll just walk away from this one, I'll make you a partner in the next property I buy." And in a small town like that, my grandpa swears a gentleman's promise, and the other contractor walks away from the auction. They start the bid at $200,000, and my grandpa offers them $100,000. The bank ended up selling for way less than my grandpa originally offered. So, he owns a lot, and instead of demolishing the house that is half built on it, like the county inspector wanted, he just decided to bring all the mistakes to code, keep everything revealed for the inspector, and continue to build on the house. The county inspector hears that instead of being torn down, my grandpa is continuing to build on the house, and drives out there immediately. When he confronts my grandpa shows him that he has brought everything to code. The inspector tells him that the house is still too tall for what the code allows, and needs to be demolished to a legal height. My grandpa simply replied, "Well, that's easy. I'll just import some dirt and put it around the first floor of the house." The inspector became frustrated and left him to build. My grandpa was smart like that, but then the whole reason I know this story is because my grandpa let my family move in with him after this house was built. And while my dad was paying grandpa rent for us to be there, grandpa drained the equity out of the house, didn't pay the mortgage, and bailed to leave us homeless once the house was foreclosed. So like I said, he was a very clever man, but a little bit shady also. 2. I am a foreigner in Greece, Athens. We have a fiber contract with Nova GR, a telecommunications company in Greece. And because my mother is still learning and adapting to Greek, we both decided it would be best if we put my number for bill SMS alerts. I go to high school, 11th grade, and also go to after school to help me with my studies. Frontal stereo. It's late 2022, and I'm in my after school when suddenly an unknown number calls me. I ask to be excused, and my after school teacher lets me take the call. Our after schools are like mini classes with 5 kids inside, so I left the class and it's Nova telling me some sort of offer. I decline, as I'm not able to make any decisions since I'm not 18, I told them that. And to not call anymore because we're not interested in any offers. The lady says thank you for your time and hangs up. I thought that was the end of it, but no, for the next month I keep getting calls from their number, alerting me to the same offer I keep declining and declining. I grow sick of it and tell my Greek friend what was happening during our after-school break. She gets very annoyed as Nova has a bad reputation here in Greece. So using my phone, she calls back and complains about how for the past month I keep getting calls when I keep declining their offers and show no interest in receiving them. Also, that when I block them, they just call me from a different number, and that they kept calling me during my after-school hours. The person on the phone said they would delete me from the system, and we thought that was that. For the next week, I still kept getting calls, so me and my friend decided we were going to start prank calling them from my number. Before I continue, I must note, when I first called them, the system before redirecting me always said, "Thank you for contacting Nova, please wait," and then would kick me off to a representative. For the next week, we called them about 2 times a day, saying the most ridiculous things and trying to waste as much of their time as possible. After a week, when we tried to call them, they had changed what their robot said before kicking you off to a representative. Now, instead of saying, "Thank you for contacting Nova, please wait," it started saying, "Dear customers, we would like to inform you that calls are recorded and kept to train our representatives," and then started to kick me off to a representative. We both laughed, as they were clearly being bothered by the amount of calls they were getting from us. That did not stop us, though. As we kept calling and calling, soon they had blocked my number, so I started using a prefix, which I now forgot, that hides your caller ID, so I continued to prank them normally. With my Cosmode prepaid SIM card, I was getting 200 minutes a month, and while I had always had some left over by the time they expired, in just 2 weeks I was already out of minutes. But that did not stop us. I just topped up and bought more minutes, and we continued on with the pranks. This went on for another week before I was called and told that if the calls did not stop, they would hand over all call recordings and my number to the police. We did stop after that, of course, but what was our goal finally happened. They stopped calling me too. It's now been 7 or 8 months since that happened, and not a single phone call from them. Ever. Was that stupid? Yes, definitely. Was it worth it to almost get myself in trouble with the police? Ah, yes, of course. 3. So to get started, some context. I work as a technician that does jobs in residential homes. We get several jobs on our routes at the beginning of the day. After we are done with our jobs, we send a message to our manager and the route service representative. If I'm done early and another tech is running behind, they will send that job to me. If there are no jobs left to be covered, we are cleared and we can head back. We also work 4 10-hour shifts, with the option to pick up a 5th day for overtime and choose between a half or a full day. Now to the story. I like picking up 5th days for a little extra overtime. On one of the days I picked up, I had a family dinner I didn't want to miss, so I made it a half day. It was a busy day and I didn't get to my last job until about 2:30. Lucky for me, the customer wasn't home, and the job rescheduled. I messaged my manager and the route service rep that I was done. I was cleared by the service rep but not the manager. I didn't think much about it since I was meant to be off 2 hours earlier, and they never add more jobs to you after your scheduled shift. So I headed back to the office and clocked out and made it to my family dinner. The next day I worked, I opened my work phone to find a message from my manager, an hour after I clocked out that day, stating, "You're not allowed to clock out unless cleared by a manager." At first I was like, oh crap, I must have forgotten to add him to the message. I checked and no, I definitely added him, and it shows he saw the message. So I took a screenshot of both messages and thought to myself, alright, I'll maliciously comply. If I don't get cleared, I won't clock out. So every day since, I made sure I was cleared by a manager. Honestly, most of the time all managers are really good at being on top of this, so I don't think I would ever get a chance to take advantage of this malicious compliance. But about a month later, I finally got my chance. On this fateful day, it was a busy one, and it was a winter and we were getting some bad snow. I had several big jobs and was behind schedule. Finally, after finishing my last job at almost 8 p.m., I messaged my manager, the same manager that gave me that rule, and the route service rep that I was done. I started heading back, wanting to get out of the snow and get home. I got home about 8:30 and I still wasn't cleared by my manager, so I didn't clock out. I messaged him again and asked if he can clear me so I can clock out. No answer. I sat and debated how much I can milk this. After all, I do get paid hourly. Well, I didn't want to abuse it too much, so I ended up calling him just before 9. He picked up, confused. I told him I've been waiting for him to clear me. Still confused, he responded, "Yeah, of course, I cleared." I reminded him that he instructed me not to clock out until after I was cleared by a manager, then thanked him and hung up, and noted in the message thread I called the manager and was cleared. It's been several months since then, and to this day, That manager still sticks to everything he says, and to this day, I still milk an extra 15 to 30 minutes of pay every time a manager forgets to clear me before I remind them. That manager isn't bad, just micromanages a bit too much from time to time. 4. This happened in 2014. I had just lost my job and was in the process of looking for a new one, but didn't have much money saved to pay bills in the meantime. So I asked my father if I could borrow $1,200 just to get me through to the next month, and I would pay him back as soon as I started working again. He sent the money, I paid my bills, and got a new job shortly after. As soon as I had the money to pay him back, I used my bank's online bill pay option to send him a check. I sent him a text and told him it was on the way, and just assumed that was the end of it. Well, a week went by and he hadn't gotten it. I thought maybe it took a few days for the bank to actually process the bill pay option because I hadn't used it before. So I asked him to just wait a few more days and see if it came. Several days later it still hadn't gotten there, so I called the bank and asked them, and they told me I could stop payment on it for free. So I did. Then I just wrote a personal check and mailed it. I just assumed something went wrong with the online bill pay. About 2 months later, I got a check in the mail from a medical facility in the state my father lives in for $1,200. I called and asked them about it, and they told me on a recorded line that it was an overpayment on an account my father had with them, and it was a legitimate check and was mine to keep. At that point, I didn't associate it with the bill pay thing I had tried to do a couple of months before. I did call my father to ask about his accounts with this place, because there was no reason they should have my address to be sending me an overpayment if he had actually made one. He had no idea what was going on because he hadn't used that facility in a few years. I looked up the place on Google, and finally it dawned on me what had happened. My father's address was on Saddlewood Drive at that point in time, but when I typed it into bill pay, my phone autocorrected it to Sandalwood, and it happened to be the same numerical address. And because my father's name was listed as a payee, they erroneously attempted to apply it to his account. So that's where my check had gone. I tried to call them again and explain what had happened, and the lady on the phone was extremely rude to me. She told me, "I already talked to you about this. I don't know why you're calling again. We sent you what we owed you. This account is settled and we will not be talking about it again." Again, this is a recorded line. I asked if she was sure they owed me this money. She practically shouted, "Yes!" And I just smiled and hung up the phone. I deposited the check into my bank that day. They didn't try to call back until about 6 weeks later. I'd been wondering how long it would take. The person who called me was a different lady, and she called to tell me that a mistake had been made and that I owed them $1,200. I told her she was misinformed and she should go back and listen to the recorded calls that I had made to their office, and gave her the dates. I had been reassured multiple times that the money was mine and that I was in the clear to cash that check, and then I hung up. I haven't heard a single thing about it since then. 5. Back in 2009, I was attending a ska show at the House of Blues in Las Vegas. For the sake of anonymity, let's call the band More From John. This was when I first started going to bigger concerts and had been listening to MJF since I got into punk and ska in middle school. To say I was excited to be there would be an understatement. Halfway through their set, as everyone is finishing up the circle pit, their singer noticed me wearing a hat my friend let me borrow and said, "We've been collecting hats on this tour, and was hoping you'd give us the one you're wearing to add to our collection." Now, if it was my hat, I wouldn't have cared. I would have just thrown it on stage without a second thought. But it wasn't my hat, and I didn't want to have to explain to my friend why I gave away something that belonged to him. So I told them, "No, I can't do that." To which the lead singer says, "Why not?" "Because it's not my hat to give away." "Come on, dude, just give us the hat." "Nah, man, sorry." "Alright, well, you're a pussy." Suddenly I'm hit with a spotlight, and everyone in the crowd seems to point and laugh in my direction. I didn't know how or when, but I swore to myself that I'd figure out a way to get back at that lead singer specifically. Cut to 2015. I'm at a show at Hard Rock Cafe, and on the strip for my friend's band that's opening up for More From John. I saw my friend's band play, and realized how bored I was at this show because I'd grown out of ska at that point in my life. I remembered that it's a new venue, so security wasn't the tightest. I also remembered a friend telling me the best way to get backstage is to act like you're supposed to be there. So with that logic, I walked past security into the green room, saw bands I loved when I was younger, grabbed some food, and started walking around when I noticed a separate green room towards the back. I walk in and saw a different lead singer from a band I loved as a teenager taking a piss while doing vocal warm-ups, and spot a giant cooler filled with PBR. I'm stuffing the beers in my leather jacket until the lead singer stops pissing, and before he knows I'm there, I yell out, "Hey!" He turns around really quick and I tell him, "Have a great show." As I'm leaving both green rooms, I hear him yell, "Thank you," and start heading back to the main venue. I run into my friend and guitar player. He asks where I got so many beers, and I look at him right in the eye with a big grin on my face and say, "Let me show you where I got 'em." Same routine, walk past security, walk through green room 1, and get to the secret green room in the back, only this time the door is closed. My guitar player must have sensed my hesitation because he just blurts out, "Fuck it, man, we're already here," and opens the door. Who should be giving us the most confused look ever but the lead singer of More From John? I run with it and remember that day he humiliated me. He asked who we were, and I gave him our local punk band name and sat as close to him on the couch as possible. I waited and sat in their confused silence while cracking open 2 more beers for my buddy and I before saying, "Didn't you write that?" And I give him the album name. "That shit was pretty neat." Just then, my guitar player gets a fake phone call and leaves. I follow him out saying, "I gotta see what that's about," and meet him in the back kitchen. We're laughing at stealing their beer like a couple of kids when the lead singer comes at us all barrel-chested and says, "Hey man, there's no local punk band by that name on this tour. So who the hell are you?" Without skipping a beat, my guitar player comes up with a quick lie and says, No, I'm the guitar tech, and he's the drum tech for our friend's opening band, but we're members of a local punk band." And the lead singer says, "Oh, okay. Because there isn't a lot of security here and anybody can just walk in, you know?" To which I replied, "Yeah, man. You better be careful." He walked away and we left the show. Fuck you, More From John. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Revenge is Ice Cream, episode 288. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Before you go, please do poke the like button. If you'd like to get the videos a little bit early, then you can support me through Patreon for as little or as much as you like a month. The link to that is in the description of the video. You can also find the link to the Hellfreezer Teespring store, where you can buy merchandise like t-shirts and mugs and such. Christmas is coming up, treat yourself. And if you'd like to support on a more one-off basis, you can make donations during streams and videos just like this one. While this is not required and will never be required, it does help pay the bills. Alright, let's see. Do we have any other business? I don't think we do, so let's move right along to Hellfreezer's question of the day. And today's question is, how do you feel about food delivery apps? I don't have any experience with them. I usually just have things delivered by the place I'm ordering from. But they're very popular with people, and I've been watching a channel called London Eats right now. It's oddly relaxing just watching this guy running around delivering food and other bits and bobs to people. Anytime I've actually tried to use these things in the past, they tend not to deliver in my area, which is disappointing. At least the ones that are better rated with a better reputation tend not to deliver in my area. Like GoPuff, for example. I've used the GoPuff not for myself, but for someone else in the past. And I've always been very satisfied with the service they've given, but I've never had anything delivered by myself, because while they operate in the UK, they don't currently deliver to my area. Not like I'm out of the way, people. Come on, expand your zones. Make those zones bigger. Then I can have an actual opinion on the service myself. But let me know what you think. Do you have favorites? Do you think they're worthwhile? Or do you prefer just to have things delivered by a driver working for the company? Okay, and with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourself.